Could Ole Miss win the SEC in 2025? I'm not going to say no because anything is possible, but if that were to occur, it'd be the most lane-given thing to exist in college football, period. Going from having the best roster ever assembled in program history that finished 9-3 with 2 heartbreaking losses to taking a bunch of transfer portal additions and inexperienced quarterback with no expectations to an 11-1 finish, a spot down in Atlanta, and eventually a college football playoff berth. And now saying that out loud, that feels like what's going to happen in 2025. But all kidding aside, Lane Kiffin and the Rebels should be good enough to compete for a spot as a dark horse in the college football playoff. And they can accomplish those goals if they answer these 3 questions throughout spring practice. Let's break it all down. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. Like the video, hit the ring notification, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, link in the description. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is fueled by FANDUEL. Visit FANDUEL.com/SECU to join today in the madness and get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. It's fun. It's free. Sign up today. FANDUEL.com/SECU. Question number 1. What is Austin Simmons' ceiling? Because we only got to see him for like a cup of coffee in that game against Georgia, but it was a pretty prominent moment in his career and a pretty program-defining moment in the season for Ole Miss. Jackson Dart goes out, Austin Simmons comes in, and he looks fantastic as QB1. Goes 5 of 6 passing for 64 yards, 2 big completions to Caden Lee, a passer rating of 172.9, and he leads them on a scoring drive that eventually sets the tone for the rest of the game. And if you talk to people down in Oxford, they'll tell you, we knew that Dart was coming back in, but we felt pretty confident if 13 had to be QB1 for the rest of the afternoon. Well, now he is QB1. Now he is the guy on campus. He's no longer part of the baseball program. His entire attention is fixated on being the Rebel starting quarterback. And unlike last year, there won't be the same amount of talent at wide receiver, but Simmons has already built a pretty good relationship with Caden Lee. We saw that in the Georgia game. They also were able to bring in a ton of different transfers that probably are going to step on up and be difference makers, like Harrison Wallace from Penn State or Caleb Odom from Alabama, Cade Cunningham, the 5-star freshman, decided to stay close to home. You also have Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest and Traylon Ray from West Virginia. They feel good about their running back room. Yeah, you're going to get back a healthy Logan Diggs for the first time since 2023. You also brought in guys like Kewan Lacey and Trey Hall. Your offensive line is pretty well put together. 2 new starters, both of which have experience of playing before, including Patrick Kutas in the SEC. And you like your tight end position. Daquan Wright, and then you bring in Luke Haas from Arkansas. What if what we just saw, that little glimpse, that preview of Austin Simmons, was nothing more than what his floor was? That is the version of what Austin Simmons can be when he is hitting his stride on a bad day. So what's he look like on a good day? We're talking about a dude that can throw for over 2,500 yards in SEC play, a guy that can average 272 yards per contest, 4 touchdowns, 1 turnover. He utilizes mobility behind the line of scrimmage to create second chance opportunities. And then he builds that relationship with Caden Lee and Cade Cunningham. And then you throw in guys like Traylon Wayne, you throw in maybe a Trey Wallace. And lo and behold, here we are now going into spring practice at the end of it and saying, Ole Miss has as lethal of an offense. And they got that second gear because of Simmons can be mobile. Simmons can trust his legs to get those extra few yards, step on up in the pocket, and be a difference maker that continues the success that Jackson Dart already implemented last year. And then lo and behold, we're doing a wash, rinse, repeat and saying, well, Ole Miss, as long as they don't lose this game, they are going to Norman this year. They are going to Athens this year. They're going to Lexington. They can't afford to lose to Kentucky. But what if they don't? What if they lose to, say, I don't know, South Carolina randomly, and they win out? Are you not exceedingly impressed with what Austin Simmons can be? And how about moving forward, going into 2026? Maybe you don't win the national championship this year, but very similar to Jackson Dart. A lot of people say, hey, I want to play with this kid for the long term. I want to be around this type of culture well past 2025. I don't think my story is done just yet. If he hits his ceiling, and it's through the roof, we're talking about maybe number 1 quarterback in the SEC. Talking about certainly a Davey O'Brien finalist. We're talking about maybe even a Heisman Trophy winner. And I'm not saying that you have to put all that pressure on him right now. I'm just saying, what is his ceiling? Is it what we saw in that Georgia game? Or is it more so untapped potential that still can take that next step forward? Question number 2, can your defensive line still be as physical? You're losing multiple starters. No more Jared Ivey, no more JJ Pegues, no more Walter Nolan, no more Prince Ewan Manley Ellen. They were the anchor for a number 2 run defense in the country last year, and they bailed Ole Miss's offense out of trouble ample times. How many moments do you remember watching as a team would try to run it on 3rd and 1, and basically before the play was even snapped, you knew it was over because if nobody was getting through that brick wall? Do you have that type of talent still? They didn't do a lot in the transfer portal, but they did bring in some guys. Deshaun Womack comes on in. They also brought in Prince Will Ewan Manley Ellen, the younger brother of Prince Ewan Manley Ellen from Nebraska. Can the guys who've been sitting and waiting for the last few years take that next step forward? Can you get it from Akilo Stone, from Xavier Harris, William Eccles, who may be one of the biggest breakout characters in 2025, Cam Franklin, Jamarius Brown? What about Surtain Perkins? Can he take that next step forward? How do you feel about your front seven still being one of the biggest X factors in the SEC? Because last year, Ole Miss was one of the best blitzing teams. They were one of the best teams against the run. They were exceptional on 3rd down. One of the biggest selling points for Ole Miss being a college football playoff threat, and for my money, the team that should have been represented at 9-3 of any of them out there, was they had a defense good enough to win you a championship. Do you still have that mentality? Do you still have those players? Are there guys that we haven't even mentioned that may be just hitting their stride at the right time by the end of practice to where fall camp rolls around and we're looking at Ole Miss even more so than we did last year, to where it feels like it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Lane Kiffin goes to the playoff. And when he does, what's going to be the storyline next? Can they win it all? Can they win multiple games? Can they host a playoff game down at Vaught Hemingway? Is Oxford going to be rolling on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of December? And can the defense be the backbone for that team while Austin Simmons and the rest of the roster finds its groove? Because if that's the case, Ole Miss is in a very good spot. They have the talent, and they have the talent that's used to playing in this style of defense. The snap count is what you're wondering. Can they embrace a bigger role? Can they have a larger part of what was successful last year going into 2025? And can they be the anchor once again for an offense that's going to have to find itself out very early on in the season? Can they be able to stabilize this unit moving forward? Because the last thing you want to do is lose a game that probably you should win, like Kentucky in week 2, or Tulane in week 4, or against LSU or Washington State, before you actually have to play your tough matchups on the road against Georgia and Oklahoma. Those are the things that I'm wondering about this defensive line. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. Even if you miss the first few minutes of a game or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can make your picks from the first whistle until the final buzzer. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. New FanDuel customers get started with $150 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet win. Just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today. That's FanDuel.com/SECU for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Disclaimer: must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, and 18 plus in DC. First online real money wagers only. $5 first deposit is required. Bonus issues with non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, back to the show. And question number 3, can the new secondary be up to speed by week 1? What was the biggest selling point, or what was the biggest downfall for Ole Miss in 2025? Those plays. Go back to that week 5 matchup against Kentucky. 4th and 6, Brock Vandagriff under duress. The pass rush is getting back there. And he uncorks the ball, and lo and behold, there's Barry and Brown, 46 yards down the field in a fresh set of downs that eventually leads to the game-winning score. What about 4th and 5 in Death Valley? You get that stop, you're in the college football playoff. Nobody's wondering what happens with Garrett Nussmeier or Brian Kelly. There's more pressure on those two. Aaron Anderson back at the end zone on verts decides to go ahead and punch it in for 6. And then you get Kyron Lacey on the opening play of overtime for LSU's offense. They're in the end zone, game over. What about DJ Lagway? when you face off against him this year in your backyard? Is he going to be able to connect with younger receivers like Trey Wilson or a veteran like J. Michael Sturdivant? How do you feel about it? It's 4 new starters in the secondary. Now, they're transfers, and several of these guys have experience playing before. Antonio Kite from Auburn, Sage Ryan from LSU. How do you feel about Kapina Guskin coming on in? How do you feel about backups? Guys like Anthony Robertson, redshirt freshman, Andy Haffey. How do you feel about him? How do you feel about Pat Broomfield stepping on up? Because you no longer have Trey Washington and John Saunders and Yam Banks and Trey Amos. All players who last year were good enough to keep you in games and certainly part of the foundation that eventually led you toward a 10-win finish with a victory over Duke in the Gator Bowl. Can you have that stable secondary? Can everybody be on the same page that Pete Golding wants by week 1? So when you're taking on Georgia State down at Vaught Hemingway Stadium, you get that same feeling you had when you played against an FCS team last year. When you played against, what was it, Mercer, and 2 years ago, it was 73-7. And the offense is building that momentum, and you're seeing the passing attack take the next step forward. And Caden Lee is turning into Trey Harris, and Deuce Alexander is the new Jordan Watkins, and Luke Haas is better than what Caden Prieskorn was. And you're saying, hey, don't look now, but we feel pretty good. Because the last thing you can afford is for Georgia State to pull the weaknesses of your secondary apart. Leave the little cracks in the armor, and then you go next week to Lexington to face off against Kentucky. And somehow they put belt ass again in their backyard. That's the last thing you can afford. If Ole Miss's defense can be stable, not elite, stable, and the offense can be as advertised with newcomers at wide receiver, with a stellar ground game headlined by Logan Diggs, fully healthy this year too, with stability at the tight end position, with a strong offensive line, with mastermind and precise, pristine play calling from Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss is in the running. I'm so shocked that so many people are not putting more money down on Ole Miss to be that dark horse in the SEC, because it just feels like a recipe waiting to happen. It feels like that you're smelling the craft, and you're getting the wafts of the smells coming on in. You're like, they're cooking in there. Ole Miss is cooking in the offseason. They have the talent at wide receiver. They have the talent on the offensive line. They have the talent across the board. As long as Austin Simmons hits, as long as the secondary doesn't give up explosive plays and they're finalizing those minute details throughout spring practice, and as long as those newcomers can step on up in the front 7, I'm looking at a 10-win season out in Oxford. And I think that's the new norm expected underneath Lane Kiffin. He's already shown you that he can win double-digit games on the regular. Now you just got to be able to do it to punch your ticket into the dozen dance and prove that when you're in the college football playoff, you are one of the most dangerous teams that nobody wants to have to face against on a Saturday, regardless of location. But let me know in the comment section down below, what are the 3 questions you have for Ole Miss going into spring practice? Like, review, hit subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, folks, I am Cole Thompson. Rebel Nation, I got a feeling this might be the year, and I'm not just sugarcoating it. Peace.